Welcome, everybody, to day 3 of Autoimmune Recovery Simplified. I have the pleasure of having Melissa Rose with us today, and I'm so excited about your presentation today, Melissa, and the training you're going to be giving to so many beautiful souls.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited about this one.
This one, actually, when I was reviewing it and taking a look at it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like really good. This is deep. This is packed. We have a lot to cover, which I absolutely love.
Oh, hello, everyone. Hello, Sarah, Joanne. So happy to have you guys here. Lots of other people are going to be popping on, but because I do have so much to cover, I would like to just dive in. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, because yes, we have a lot. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Let me go ahead and go to the first slide and let me know when you want me to advance to the next one.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So this is what I call kind of the mystery space, if you will. This is when you know something is wrong, like you know it. Like we live in our bodies, right? We get to walk and live and breathe and move here, but we know when something is not right. And a lot of times when we are walking into an autoimmune dis-ease situation, it's something that may happen kind of gradually, and we don't really notice that things are really off kilter unless we're paying attention until our symptoms get like in our face, right? So what we're going to talk about today is when you know something is wrong, it doesn't have a name, you don't have a diagnosis yet for it. We're going to talk through some of the pieces, like why and how this happens, like the transition into this. And then we're going to be working on a very powerful exercise for you at the end. I mean, really something for you to do that when you go to your doctor, or when you start working with a functional medicine practitioner, or when you start working with, whoever you choose as a practitioner, they will need this piece of information. So I'm going to teach you how to do that for yourself. Right?
Okay.
So one of the,
back too far. All right.
That's okay. That's okay. One of the most scary parts, I think, about this space is because we don't really know what's going on. Like, we don't have a name. And a lot of times we end up at midnight or 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning researching on Dr. Google with our favorite beverage. And by the time we've exhausted everything that we can find on the internet, we have worked ourselves into an early grave and we're scared spitless. That's no place from which to really do some calm, just plain out thinking about what is happening. What do I see? What are the facts, right? You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Thank you. So this is what a lot of my clients have experienced. And most of these I experienced myself on my journey to getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So I don't know how many doctors said, kind of gently patted me on the back. It's all in your head. Like you're imagining your symptoms, because right when we start having an autoimmune condition, a lot of times it's not visible to other people. It's the pain we feel. It's the things that don't work. It's not being able to have sensation in your hands. It's your belly feeling terrible all the time. It's running to the bathroom every 2 seconds. It's symptoms that we're experiencing but other people don't see. You're imagining this. I'm like, what? We live in our bodies. How can we imagine this? It's actually happening. This is a classic one. Your blood work looks fine. See you next year. I've got so many clients that'll say that, and they bring me blood work and we sit down and we go, okay, this system is out of balance. This is happening here. This is happening here. Your liver is really sludgy. You've got, whatever. And we understand from blood work a lot of the imbalances that are beginning in the body. that a practitioner or a doctor normally will not be able to see because they've not been trained to read blood work in the way in which I have been trained. So it's really quite amazing to me when I see blood work come in like that and there's red, all over it, or maybe not very much red, meaning high or low, but they're very powerful numbers that give us clues around the body systems that aren't working. This one's classic. You aren't sick enough, so I can't help you. Come back when you're worse. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. Or maybe we did, I guess we did talk about this on Monday, because if you're not sick enough to get a diagnosis, then there's not a lot of, a physician generally doesn't have a lot of leeway or a lot of things that they can do to help you. Mm-hmm. This is another classic one. I remember asking this to the neurologist when he diagnosed me. Isn't there something I can do with my diet and with food that can help? And he looked at me with these deadpan eyes like, no, food doesn't make any difference. I was like, oh my goodness, food is one of our greatest powers. And I know that now, but I didn't then. Mm-hmm. So I have a quick question for you, all of you that are listening. When you were or are on the journey of really trying to figure out what's going on, what was your first, how do I ask this well? What was your first experience when you first realized that things were going off in your body? I don't want you to answer that right now. I want you to hold that question because we're going to use it at the end of the presentation. Okay? Next slide, please.
Yes. Give me 2 seconds. All right.
Sorry, you're multitasking over there.
That's all right.
Oh, gosh. So this is something that I've seen more than I wish I had. Straight up trauma in the doctor's office. So I've heard stories and I experienced this myself. Some of my clients have been mistreated so badly that they left the doctor's office in tears, literally. And when you're so sick and you're looking for answers, that is so not what is needed. Belittled to the point of accepting meds they didn't want or need. This is a big one. And one of the base prime principles that we lean into here at Sagebrush Wellness is helping you take back your power, the power to say yes and no. Say that feels right for my body. No, that doesn't feel right for my body. And being able to be respected in that choice. Fear tactics used to force the client into an action that every cell of the body was just screaming that it's not right for me. And I remember that in the session that I when I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I had like 2 or 3 different choices of disease modifying drugs that I was supposed to choose from. And I looked at those. And even though back then I didn't know what they did, I didn't understand how they worked in the body, but I knew that that was not going to help me. And I knew it would cause more harm than good. So I walked out of the office without making a choice of a medication, good, bad, or otherwise. I was scared to death and I wasn't thinking very good, but I was just like, oh, everything in my body said no, right? So we have to lean into our own, this is right for me, right? Mm-hmm. Or not right for me. Next slide, please.
You know, Melissa, when you're talking about that, mm-hmm. It brought up a memory for me that when I was in the doctor's office and she's just giving me objective facts, mm-hmm. and she's expecting me to digest all of this information after she just dropped a bomb on me.
Literally. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even have told you my name at that mm-hmm. time. And now you want me to decide a decision that has possible side effects to it. Mm-hmm. So what you're talking about is so powerful because I don't know if we've all been there, but I think mm-hmm. a high amount of us have. So if you've been here at this moment of that fear, of that moment, I just want you to pop yes in chat. Let me know that, we're not alone, because this helps us feel better too, that we're like, okay, what we're talking about is something that may be heard by multiple other people. So thank you so much. But thank you, everybody, for popping a yes in chat or even a no in chat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at that point. So
yeah.
Yep.
And just to kind of do a little bit of an aside, one of the things I really had to work through for myself in my recovery journey was because of what I had experienced personally. I had to work through forgiveness, straight up forgiveness for the neurologists and some of the specialists that treated me badly. And I felt had lied to me when they said you can't get well, because I get to live it every day. And there was I had to work at that, to forgive, because to really heal deeply, I had to forgive. That was part of my journey. And, I don't know what y'all's experiences are, but knowing that, allowing forgiveness for yourself in the moment and allowing forgiveness for the practitioner that treated you not very well can also support your healing journey. All right, I'll get back on task.
Okay. Thank you.
So if anything was done at those appointments, it was probably endless rounds of tests with not any real conclusion or diagnosis. Or if something was done, generally it's some sort of an antibiotic, because, the doctor doesn't really have any leeway to be able to use. They don't have a diagnosis to use yet, or an antidepressant. And it's like, oh, golly, no, it's not in my head. Next slide, please. So let's talk about this, right? What's really going on? Next slide, please. My poor mother. I asked why so much when I was growing up, and I still ask why. That's like part of my work. But I want you to give yourself permission to ask why, right? Here's some of the most common symptoms that I see for folks with autoimmune conditions: fatigue, tiredness, apathy. Your get up and go, got up and went somewhere and you don't know where it went. Muscle weakness, joint pain and swelling, muscle aches and pains, skin issues, rashes, itching, dry skin, dry mouth, inflammation, hair loss, abdominal pain or digestive issues, bloating, diarrhea or constipation, or flipping back and forth between the two, acid reflux, nausea, blood or mucus in the stool, headaches, migraines, brain fog, difficulty thinking clearly, dizziness. I didn't put it in here too, but sometimes it can feel like it's hard to form words, or stuttering. Like it's hard, the word in your head, but it can't get out your mouth. Anxiety, depression, memory issues, lightheadedness, numbness and tingling, unexplained fever. This is a real, the ones here in this last little bullet point are pretty important. If you have these, we need to get on working together to see what's going on with this. Unexplained fever, chest pain, weight gain or loss, rapid or irregular heartbeat, shortness of breath, temperature sensitivity. But instead of thinking of these symptoms as and looking at them and looking up on Dr. Google and seeing all the hairy, scary things it could be, what if we started changing the question we ask? Can you go to the next slide? What if we could shift our question from, like, we're looking these symptoms right in the face, they're happening right, and it's scary. But what if we could shift our question and shift our focus from the fear of those and like, oh my gosh, what's happening to me, to, and what could this mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
But start to ask, what is out of balance in my body and my life? And sometimes we have no idea, but just asking that question can be a great place to start. But here's the biggest one. We want to shift to begin asking, what is causing this symptom or cluster of symptoms? That's where the gold mine is. Next slide, please. All right, guys. So here are the questions we want to think about. What makes the most sense to you? To investigate and uncover what's causing this symptom or symptoms, resolve that cause so the symptom can go away. Next slide. Or here's the other side of it. Next slide. Or do we take a medication that masks the symptoms and just continue our life with what we're doing without resolving why the symptoms are happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back side of that, we then begin to accumulate more symptoms until the body hits a wall. And sometimes we think of like when we get bad enough to really get serious about researching and finding somebody who can give us that diagnosis. To me, that's what equals hitting a wall. Or when you're no longer mobile, or you're no longer able to work, or this is becoming big enough that you can't perform or do what you need to do in your daily life. So think about that. Which one makes the most sense to you? Next slide, please.
I'm just going to say this real quick before I hit that slide change.
Okay.
That moment of hitting the wall can lead us in such a state of despair.
Oh, and fear.
And fear, like you talked about, like there's, what am I supposed to do? How can this happen? And it's almost like we're grabbing at straws.
Yeah.
So anybody out there, I'd really like to know, has anybody felt this way? Like you're just like, oh, I'm just going to try something else. And what if I do this? It's almost like you're flailing, like you're just help me, but you don't even know where to turn next. Just pop a yes into that if you felt this way. So,
can I put a yes in there too?
Yeah. yes, I felt that way. Like, what the heck is going on with me? Why I almost feel like my body is against me.
Yeah.
Like I'm fighting it tooth and nail.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. I hear you, Jill. All right. So let's talk about the common autoimmune disease progression. And for a lot of you here today, you may or may not have a diagnosis. But as I'm reading through this, it's going to trigger. You're going to be like, yep. And it doesn't really matter if you have rheumatoid arthritis, or if you have fibromyalgia, or if you have Graves' disease, or if you have, type 1 diabetes, if you have multiple sclerosis. It really doesn't matter. What is going off the rails in the body follows much the same course. Okay. So usually starts with some sort of a traumatic event. So it's an exposure of the immune system, or an attack on the immune system occurs that is larger than it can handle. So that can be something traumatic in your world, like you were in a terrible car accident and just so many injuries and so many things that resulted from that. Or it could have been an emotional, something that happened. Maybe your best friend passed away when you were a kiddo, or, a family member, or maybe you moved to a place and you got bullied in your new school, or, you name it. Or it could be a big illness of some kind, like like you were sick for a month and on 6 antibiotics or something like that. That was really an assault to your body system. Okay. What begins to happen in the aftermath of that is our bodies are deluged with all this stuff that our bodies have to handle. And it's it's more than we can handle. So it starts to create higher oxidative stress. We get tissue damage. We get poor inflammation resolution, right? And it starts to create this forward feeding cycle, because then your body is not, it's setting back even further. Excess load begins to happen on the endocrine glands. We get malabsorption in the gut, creating reduced nutrition to fuel systems in the body. If your cells literally are not getting the fuel that they need, you're going to feel like crap. Reduced ability to excrete toxins. This is another really, really big one. When we're thinking cellularly, if your body can't take out the kitchen garbage, think about what happens when you don't take out the kitchen garbage and you threw, maybe the trimmings from chicken last night in there. Or, by day 2 or day 3, it gets pretty nasty. And if your body's not able to excrete the toxins like it needs to, take out the kitchen garbage, it gets bad fairly quickly. Increased systemic viral, bacterial, pathogenic, and I didn't put it in here, but parasitic load. Our body becomes open and susceptible to those things. Where if we're just, ticking right along, our body's just moving along like it's supposed to, everything's working right, those things have no hold on us. But when our body is already trying to recover from this, an assault of some kind on the body system, we're vulnerable. Okay. Next slide, please. Right. So the next thing that we start to see to start happen is genetics start to kick in. Your DNA starts to be affected. Right? So I want you to understand this. You guys have all heard of DNA SNPs and MTHFR and COMT and all the things, right? But genetics, our genes, our DNA, it's influenceable, both for the bad and the good. So when somebody says, I've got a genetic mutation that causes me to have this issue, I'm like, okay, great. Let's figure out what that is, and let's figure out how to optimize that gene and help it work as well as possible, because we can. Then, after we get to this layer, chronic autoimmune symptoms become visible. Maybe they've even started to be visible before, okay? But after this, our bodies are it's really starting to struggle, and molecular mimicry begins and creates the action that is assumed by the conventional medicine world as the body turning dumb and attacking itself. And I promise you, I will not go off on a tirade around this. Someday I may come back in and teach a class how this is actually not what's happening. But from the outside world, this is what it looks like. Our bodies are not dumb. Next slide. Thank you. So in each of those steps that we just went through, there is nowhere that we cannot step in and begin addressing what's happening in the body. The earlier we can get it done, the earlier we can step in and start affecting change in the body, the less permanent damage is present or can potentially be present. But hear me, especially those of you who have had neurological issues for 30 years. It's never too late to begin your recovery journey. And let me tell you something. My left side was completely numb. Like, maybe this is TMI, but I'd shave my legs and shave a streak of skin off, and I'd never know it. So when you have that kind of neurological, I didn't expect to have full feeling ever on my left side again. Okay? I have it. I get to have it every day. So when I'm working with a client who has some deep neurological symptoms, you will never hear me say, "Hun, I don't know if you're ever going to," whatever. Because I've seen miracles happen in the body so many years and so many times. I will never say that ever again. I used to say it when I first started in this work, but not again, because I've seen the body just blow my mind with its ability to heal. Next slide, please. All right, guys. Dig out your pen and paper or make notes on your phone, whatever you are able to do, because I'm going to teach you how to do a very important piece of information gathering that can help you and your practitioner, whoever you choose to work with, really zero in and have good clues around what is driving the disease process in your body. Okay, we're going to create a timeline. So let's start from the space of using the realizations that you tapped in on Monday and then yesterday, that your body can be well. Okay, so we're going to create a timeline of your symptoms when they showed up. And these are the things that I want you to include on the timeline. For some people, it's easier to do it on the computer because you can, add when you remember something new, you can add it in. But I want you to keep it in chronological order if you can. I'm a pen and paper girl, and so I like to use a notebook. But when did you experience the beginning of a new symptom? So go back as far as you can. Sometimes we have to work backwards from where we are now. Okay. When did you experience any, so for example, just going back into kind of my timeline, when was the first time I knew that I could, I was getting tingling in my left hand? Okay, put that down. What was happening around that time? Okay, what was the next big symptom? I started to really experience heavy anxiety. Okay, when did that happen? What was happening around that time? What was happening in my body, in my world? Okay, so what happened next? That's what we want to do, is kind of create a timeline of our symptoms when they happened. Be sure to also include any significant illness. Like if you had a really bad sinus infection, or you got pneumonia, or you had a really bad flu bug that just wouldn't quit when you were a kiddo. Thinking about some of these larger things. Include big things that happened in your world, like deaths, trauma, abuse, those kinds of things. Those are huge in this journey of autoimmune, okay? Include what houses you lived in and where. So one of the reasons this is important is for looking at toxicity and possible mold issues, okay? I've seen mold toxicity cause MS all on its own. Cause the MS symptoms enough that you get diagnosed with MS, okay? Any significant emotional stressors, a divorce, something that happened that just broke your heart. Put those in there. It could have been your favorite dog passed, and it just broke you wide open, okay? And then any meds, especially folks that have lupus. This is a really, really important note to have in your timeline. Not just did you have meds, but what were they and how long did you take them, if you have that information. Don't get bogged down too much in this. This can be as broad or as just really detailed as you want. The more detailed, the easier it is to use it to find drivers. But this is really, really important. So both Matt and I are accepting new clients. But when I bring a new client in, this is such a valuable piece of information for me to be able to help you uncover what's driving your disease process. Okay? Any questions around that? Anything that's unclear? Anything that you hear and see, Matt, that's potentially unclear around that? Oh, I think you froze, Matt. Sorry. Do any of you who are listening have any questions that you want to put in the chat around this? Awesome. I'm just answering a few personal ones in the chat here. So as you're putting this together for yourself, really lean in, and it might get a little painful sometimes, but lean in. This is a very valuable exercise. Oh, Matt dropped off. All right, so I want to invite you guys into the challenge tomorrow. Matt is going to be deepening our understanding and our look into the mindset piece of this and what happens in our, like, how we think about this and our intentions. But I want to invite you to our masterclass we're having on Friday. So this is a deep dive. You guys have been getting little bits this week of training, but on Friday, we're going to be spending about 90 minutes together, diving deep into this whole autoimmune recovery simplified discussion. And I'd love to have you join us. If you haven't already, make sure to, after each one of our chats, we always send out a recording of this class. In that email will be the link to be able to sign up for the masterclass. Awesome, awesome. I hope you guys have an absolutely amazing evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night. If you have any questions in between now and then, I'm popping into the group to answer questions as I can, and Matt's doing the same thing. So please feel free to create conversation in the Facebook group. That's what we're here for, is to just create a community of people who have the intention of being well. Awesome. You guys enjoy your evening. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.